Hello, everyone, and welcome to the grand and glorious return of the Pulls pod. After a few personal issues, it's nice to be back behind the microphone, and what a week to do it in. We did have a recording set for this afternoon around about 2 o'clock with Danny from The Red and about 4:30 with Isaac as well. We've joined forces, we've joined everyone together, given the seismic news coming a 4:15 this afternoon on New Year's Eve regarding the sale and the takeover, completed takeover of Hartlepool United. Before we get into it, Danny, Isaac, how are you both?
Couldn't be
We're
better.
very good.
Couldn't be
Yeah.
better.
I imagine that this response was coming. I just thought I'd ask. It's nice to get the formalities out of the way, but we were going to talk about a brilliant result at Rochdale yesterday. We were going to talk about, various other things, but there is breaking news to start off with regards to the takeover of Hartlepool United as Raj Singh has departed and American investor Landon Smith has come in. He's co-founder of a real estate company called Tailwind Group in America, and that has taken effect immediately. So, well, gentlemen, I mean, the obvious question is it seems to have been trundling along for a long time now, not necessarily Landon Smith, but just in general, the fact that Raj Singh said in March this year that he was stepping down as chairman. He came back as chairman with the controversial 63% vote. A lot of things have gone on in the background, the media ban of Rob Law and Robbie Stelling. And at the end of it all, he has proven true to his word that he has sold the club. And to be fair, Danny, I think the thing that stands out is how sudden this has been. It's been going on in the background for however long that may be. I think we've had 6 to 8 weeks, but that could be just a guess at this point. But given everything that went on at the close season, where leaks happened and NDAs may well have been broken, this has gone on very, very discreetly behind the scenes, and it's resulted in an outcome that I think a lot of fans wanted.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing when it comes to talking business. I think we'll hear a little bit of Raj Singh's chat in a little bit, but even he says about that's how business should be done. And I think that shows that the level of person coming into the club as well, the level of professionalism we're getting from the new owners. And I think that's a really, really positive sign in that itself. And also, it's just a really, really good chance to be positive because there's been a lot of negativity for so long. I mean, it's a perfect chance to basically wipe the slate clean, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, Isaac. I'm assuming you agree with pretty much everything you said there.
Yeah, I agree. I think like you look in the summer and the stuff that was happening between the rumored parties then and like the swipes that both Rags and the consortium were having between each other. And it just seems like this one's gone under the radar. Like no one knew about it. And I think it's done been like Danny said, being done professionally, which shows like the good business mindset that this new owner has. So when it was a nice surprise just seeing the notification from Pool saying that like a takeover's been completed. So no, pleased it's been done and with a new era.
Absolutely. And the statement on the website, it's fairly lengthy. There's quite a bit in there from Raj Singh and a bit in there from Landon Smith as well. Worth noting as well as the official Twitter account did that the website crashed when the statement came out, which shows you just how popular it was, but also how sudden it was. As we've said, it came very much out of the blue. The only sort of notice that we all had, any of us, was today when sort of the embargoes came out and things happened. And, there was a feeling that something might happen with rumours, etc., that came out. But on the whole, the fan base seemed very surprised by it. And there's a lot of celebrations going on, not just for New Year now, but, around the fan base as well. There'll be a few fireworks, I think extra fireworks tonight from that point of view. As it is though, Raj Singh, it's a topic that's divided opinion a lot, specifically sort of 2 3 years, I would say, potentially, because around the promotion time, obviously there was nothing to be said. He'd taken us out of the National League, he'd taken us into League Two, and it's worth saying that that promotion wasn't really expected at the time. Not that we weren't challenging at the top, towards the top of the league, but the form that we showed that season, it wasn't reflected in the expectations at the start of the season, Isaac. And I do think personally. If he'd left at that point, and hindsight is obviously 2020, but if he'd left at that point, or even at the end of our first season in League Two, where we were mid-table, we were a decent-sized club, you know, his reputation wouldn't have been tarnished as much by the previous 3 years.
I think it's a real shame. You look back when Raj took over, he did save the club, which I think people have forgot about. Um, Obviously, we had the promotion. Um, but then I think after that Rotherham game, which all been downhill, I think obviously the relegations, what happened last summer, banning of media, um, and I think it was only going to get worse under him. So I think it was the right time to go, but it's a shame really because you know I think his legacy's been ruined over the last 4 or 5 years, which looking back, they shouldn't have ended like that, but that's football unfortunately. But I suppose you can thank him for the last what he was saving the club, but I think it was the right time for him to sell the club.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you'll find many people who disagree with the fact that selling the club was in the club's best interests and in Raj Singh's best interests as well. I think it had become untenable at that point, and unfortunately, oh, you're going to have a visitor there, Danny. I think in the background. Yeah, I noticed you'd muted your mic, but I wasn't letting you get away with that one. But yeah, to be fair to him, he did back out quite quickly. But yeah, getting back onto the point, it was probably the right time for both the club and for Raj Singh to go. And Danny, I think the last 3 years have taken their toll on a lot of people in and out of the club. A lot of fans have voiced their frustrations, particularly in the current season. And I think the stuff that happened the summer just gone, with regards to the banning of media figures, with regard to the 63% vote, and it just seemed to become a bit untenable at that point, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think there was a period where you mentioned the banning of media and stuff like that, where it felt like it was too far gone to salvage. And I mean, we've seen him do multiple interviews. That one specifically with Paul Frost in the summer, just sort of felt like everything was sort of adding fuel to the fire. And well, it's just a case of we can really now look past it. And I think it's a good chance for everyone, not just at the club, but fans, everyone to just sort of say, look, the club was saved. And I think it's fair to say that, I mean, it certainly looks still, when you look at it from sort of a neutral view, that financially we are a lot better off than when he took over. I mean, you think Gary Coxall sort of period, and then obviously when we nearly went bust, there was a lot of issues around actually going bust. And I don't think we've ever really had that in that 8-year span. So I think when you look at it that way, and he has said many a time that he wants to leave the club better than he found it, I think league speaking and performance speaking, it's probably relatively the same. But I think behind the scenes, in terms of where the finances are at and stuff like that, I think it's fair to say that we're a lot better off for that.
Yeah, I think the statement on the website as part of the press release, there's quite a long segment there from Raj Singh saying that it's been a real privilege to act as custodian for Hartlepool United for nearly 8 years. And it seems, just coming off that, it does seem like a long time, doesn't it? It doesn't feel like that long ago that all of this stuff happened with regards to the game against Wrexham, where everyone joined together, and that sort of March, April time where it did feel like the club was on the brink. But it has sort of flown over very quickly when you think about, COVID happening in that time, the promotion, the relegation, and other things thereon. He goes on to say, I'm incredibly proud to have played a small part in this great club's journey. I stepped in to help Hartlepool United when it was in a very difficult position, and ever since I have done my utmost to help. Whilst we've not achieved sustained Football League status, there have been some memorable days with the promotion at Ashton Gate and cup runs, including a fourth round FA Cup tie against Crystal Palace and a Papa John's Trophy semi-final against Rotherham, as you mentioned as well, Alex. Alex? As you mentioned as well, Isaac. I don't know why I said Alex. There's no Alex here. That was weird. Yeah, that left us just a couple of penalties away from the club's first ever visit to Wembley. And I must say, to that point, if there was ever a Pools thing that we were going to get beat in that semi-final, it was going to be taken. I think they were the leaders at that time, weren't they? They were very close to it, Rotherham. They were very close to the top of League One, and taking them to penalties and getting beat on penalties and being that close to a Wembley visit, our first ever Wembley visit. It's just peak Pools, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, by the way, missing an open goal pretty much in that as well when it was 2-2.
Mm.
Yeah, it just feels like one of those, doesn't it? Big jinx where we're never going to make it to Wembley in our lives unless we do a tour at some point. I've done it. I've done a tour of Wembley. Obviously, it's a fantastic stadium, but it'd just be fantastic to watch us play there, wouldn't it? At some point, even if it's a friendly, I'll take a friendly. Can we have like Tottenham in a friendly or something like that? Playing at Wembley, we'll take the gate receipts back north, and someone can do us a favour. But even so, he's right though. There were quite a few memorable moments in his tenure, not so much the last couple of years for obvious reasons, but certainly in those years where we had promotion, where unfortunately we weren't able to get into the ground, but we managed to get back in for the playoff tie, the final game of the season, Ashton Gate. Ashton Gate, I think we were all at Ashton Gate, weren't we, that day?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
say, the roller coaster of emotions. We've talked about it on here before, but just a ridiculous game for more than one reason, and in the end we came out on top. But the other one being the Crystal Palace tie and the emotions around that with Graham Lee and his wife. Crystal Palace, who I think we can all agree were very gracious in the build-up and on the day itself. They were excellent hosts for us at the time. They donated quite a lot to the fundraising, I think, as well, if I remember
Mm.
rightly.
Yeah.
So it was a fantastic day. Unfortunately, we didn't quite, do too much on the pitch. We gave it a go, but they were just better than us. Did Michael Elise score that day?
Yeah.
I think he did, didn't
Yeah.
he?
I know Gahey got the first.
Yeah. So Mark Gahey, who's been linked with every top club under the sun, and Michael Elise, who's now by Munich.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Not
summertime.
too
I
much you
mean,
can do about that, is there?
not really. I mean, not really, not at all. But it was a very good day. It was nice to get a Premier League club for once because we've not exactly had the big history in that department. Certainly not in the last sort of 25 years or so. It's very rare that we get these clubs. So it was nice to go while it was possible. And the other thing being, of course, our previous cup runs in the last 3 years or so, or the complete lack of them. Fingers crossed, someone tells our new investor that that does actually matter. Please. No more Hampton and Richmond, no more Anstey Nomads, nothing like that. I'm not
Gainsborough
asking for an
Trinity.
8-0. I'm not asking for an 8-0. Just beat them, please. Just have none of that anymore, please. But going on to the next bit, which comes back to what you were saying, Danny. Overall, I do believe the club is in a better place than when I found it, which was always a fundamental aim. It has operated with financial stability for an extended period, and it has made progress in some key areas on and off the field, including with commercial growth, formation of a new budding academy system, and establishing EFL readiness in various departments. He then says as well about the search for an owner. It's taken far longer than he ever imagined, and at various points questioned whether I should continue, which is an interesting quote. However, after more than 2.5 years, I'm now delighted to confirm Landon has passed all league and FA ownership criteria, including submission of detailed business plans and upfront proof of funding. Our own process and dealings with Landon have been very professional from the outset and remain fully confidential, which is always an excellent sign. And just to come on to that one, we've already said about the sort of the NDA side of things, the quite discreet nature of these things. But the other thing he's saying there is about the detailed business plans and about the proof of funding as well, which Isaac has been a very big sticking point for Raj Singh in the past. He's always said that no one has shown proof. He's always said that this is a big sticking point and a big stumbling block. And he seems to have, or Landon Smith seems to have gotten over that.
Yeah, which is important. I think nowadays you have to submit. I'm not sure the figure, but you have to show a certain amount of funds to let the league, and I think you need to pay a deposit as well, if I'm right. So I think that's probably been the like biggest stumbling block for people. But to have to have all complete now is probably the main thing, I suppose.
Absolutely. And we'll come on to Landon Smith's vision for the club, which he sets out in the statement in a bit. Raj Singh does say Landon comes with an enthusiasm, skill sets, and financial backing that should serve the club well in its next chapter. And I would urge all supporters to get behind him, but also to be patient and sympathetic with plans and progress. He then thanks everyone. He thanks the club board, staff, players, volunteers, and partners, both past and present. And he says about how being an owner of a football club can be all consuming. It takes its toll, and that is undoubtedly true. I don't think he's helped himself with certain things like the bans, for example, and the way that he acted in May. But at the end of the day, there does come a line, and I think we need to just draw a line under that now, I think, and just carry on. We've got a new owner now. He's done his bit and he's now out of the picture. And at the end of it, he does say, finally, and perhaps most prominently, I would also like to thank the fans for their support over the years. Pools truly is an incredible club with some of the most incredible supporters in the game. I wish them all the very best, and I will be eagerly following the next chapter as a supporter myself. Danny, you spoke to him a few weeks ago. Not in front of a fireplace, I don't think.
No.
Or with Paul Frost in the room, so there was a couple of differences. But you did speak to him at the time, and I'm going to assume there was no indication at any point in that interview, off or on camera to you, that this was in the running at all.
Well, the one thing I will say is off camera, off recording, there was no mention of anything like this. However, I mean, I have gone back and listened to it because it just always seemed weird to me that at the end of it, he was talking about, you'll be here long after I'm gone. It's your club. It's the sort of things I don't think we've really heard from him, just that sort of tone. So it's obvious that I think by then he probably knew that it was going to go through. I think Elon knew 2 weeks ago that it was more than likely going to go through. But yeah, I had no indication until obviously we spoke with Raj earlier on today about the takeover.
And speaking of Raj, you did say that you'd spoken to him earlier on, and we have the chat now for you.
Raj, congratulations on what has been a bit of a long task for you. But your reaction now, the club is in another pair of hands.
Relieved. It's been a long 2.5 years, and it's been really tough at times. But I'm really glad that we managed to get it over the line. The sale agreed.
There's been a lot of talk over the period about possible buyers coming in. This one seems to have flown under the radar, but I suppose that's the way serious deals are done.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how the deals should be done. I think we started speaking to the new owners about 6 weeks ago. So that's how quickly the deals actually got done, to start to finish. Been really easy to deal with. A lot of points to negotiate, as you can imagine, with a deal like this. But yeah, everybody got the job done.
And maybe to finish off your time of ownership, a look back at your time with Hartlepool and what sort of memories you're going to hold from that.
Some good ones, some not so good. But from day one, 8 years ago, actually it was the 15th of January 2018, when representatives from the club came to my house to discuss the takeover. And from that day on, I mentioned that, look, I wanted to leave the club in a better shape than I find it. And that's always been the case. I know some people were making the noises in the summer that, I'm trying to don't want to sell, I'm trying to hold out for too much money. They were just lies and rubbish. And this deal's actually proves it.
And just in that chat as well, Danny, how do you think he came across? And looking back on his tenure as a whole, sort of bringing everything together, it's very difficult to do that considering how different certain parts of it were. But given how he's spoken there, how would you potentially see it?
I think as much as the rest of the fan base are sort of really, really excited to sort of forget about it, I think he's also of a similar mindset of the last couple of years has been on field, nothing short of disastrous, I would say. I think a relegation, multiple cup exits to Gainsborough, Anstey, Chester, the list goes on. So I think it sort of echoed really that the last couple of years have been far from what he wants. But to also then go on to say about how he's leaving the club better than he found it financially, it's a big thing that we've already spoke about. And just going forward, I think he'll still be watching on as a fan. And, well, I think it's a time to really look back and say, well, he did save the club. We're no real worse off. I mean, it's sort of been a roller coaster 8 years, but we've seen with owners, even in the National League, that it can go a lot worse than that.
Well, it can. Isaac, are you sort of in agreement?
Yeah, I agree. Like I mentioned before, I think particularly the last 3 or 4 years haven't been great, but I don't think you can forget that he did save the club, and obviously the first 3 or 4 years where we got back to the AFL had the cup runs. I think the whole club around that time was just a totally different environment to what it was and what it is now. It was just everyone at the northwest corner bouncing every. It was just incredible. And hopefully now we can get them things back.
Well, you mentioned there, I was going to mention it later on, but our next home game being against Altrincham on the 17th of January. 12:30 kick-off. It's on DAZN for streaming and, other things, which we won't get into, flash drives. But it's a very good opportunity. We've always seen when people take over clubs, when there are takeovers in the offing, we've seen something of a swell of support at many different clubs. When the takeover goes through, you have your first home game, you want to demonstrate what the club is about, and there is something of a relief often as well about the fact that the previous regime has been ended and the new regime is beginning. And we can all make promises. I mean, Landon Smith, we'll come on to his manifesto, if you like, shortly, but that home game you would think is pivotal to demonstrating what this club can be about against a team in Altrincham that they're not a terrible side by any stretch, Altrincham, but it's a good opportunity at home to provide a benchmark and a springboard for what will come afterwards. And even if nothing comes of this season, it is an opportunity to sort of bridge the gap, if you like, between what we've had previously and what comes in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a real big chance for some positivity. Even if this season doesn't go, we don't end up in the playoffs, or if we don't end up getting promotion. I think if we finish this season well enough, even sort of where we are now, but just galvanise everybody, fans, club, staff. If we can end this season doing all right and everyone actually on the same page for what feels like the first time in a long time, we can then go into the summer and really, really, really give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely, Isaac.
Well, I just want to urge the club to reduce the ticket prices, urge people to come, because I think it's important. I think it's the 17th for playing Altrincham for everyone. People who have been boycotting, people who have not been for a while, to just come back to the club and try and make a good atmosphere. And it's an interesting point, but I think it's interesting how the club haven't announced half-season ticket sales yet, because it's usually this time of year that they do. So have they probably delayed it, knowing that this announcement was going to come out, so people could buy them?
There are some very good shouts in there, to be fair. I think the first one you mentioned was about reducing the ticket prices. We've seen it before. We've seen it in games where attendances may not be as high as you might like. So we've seen clubs do it, and they are allowed. I think there is a set number that they're allowed to do a season. I think they can't do it for every game. There's like 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that where they're allowed to do it. But we haven't seen pools do it that much in previous years, sort of recently. And I think you are right. It would be a brilliant opportunity, especially with it being an early game as well, because attendances do tend to drop slightly for early games and late games because they're not at 3 o'clock. They're on the telly and you can watch them. But dropping the ticket prices would be a brilliant way to start a tenure, if nothing else, and it will bring more people back. There'll be enough people coming back anyway because of the optimism, because of the change in ownership. But it is a very good idea to bridge that gap, as I said before, between the previous and the new. You mentioned as well half-season tickets. That's another very good point as well. We've played 25 games of the 46. You would usually see them around sort of 2 weeks before Christmas, I think. 2 weeks, 3 weeks before Christmas.
Just to enter the post, I've added the half-season tickets now to the website,
Have they?
apparently.
I'll tell you
According
what,
to
we've
someone.
this is all breaking news at the minute, isn't it? It's all happening. But yeah, it's a very good opportunity again, just to make sure that the goodwill is there, because I don't know how much they are. I'm trying to have a look now, but this is all happening as it happens on New Year's Eve. But you do make a very good point, especially with the Altrincham one. I think the Altrincham game now becomes key for the club as a whole to show that this is a new tenure and a new era. The walking game on Saturday is a very good opportunity, don't get me wrong, to go away and to provide a statement off the back of this optimism, because it's not going to dull everyone's optimism. But if we go to Woking and get beat 3-0 on Saturday, it's going to be a bit of a downer, isn't it, to start the year?
Yeah.
After such a good couple of days, it'd be very like Pools, wouldn't it, to go to Woking and just turn in a terrible performance and, suffer a 2-0 defeat or a 3-0 defeat.
Words right out of my mouth. It is the most Pools thing that I've ever seen in my life. But I tell you what, new era, positivity. We're going to go there, and it is going to be 2 or 3-0, but we're going to win 2 or 3-0.
Oh.
Well, absolutely. I think, to be fair, we'll come on to Woking in detail in a bit. We will talk about Rochdale as well. We're obviously covering the breaking news first. But it is a very good opportunity. I think going back to the press release, because Landon Smith did also have his say after the takeover was confirmed. He said, "I'm delighted and honoured to take the reins as the latest steward at Hartlepool United. Our immediate priority is to ensure a smooth transition period and to support the current staff and team with their endeavours this season. That work will start straight away." He does come on to his longer term vision, but I just want to point out the word that he uses in the first bit of that there, which is steward, because that word tends to get fans on side very quickly. Because the idea amongst football fans, particularly in this country, is that owners are just stewards of clubs. They sort of look after the club while they're there, and then they pass it on when the time is right. So using the word steward, I think, is quite a shrewd move, I think, if nothing else. I'll say we'll have to see what he does from this point onwards, but it's a good start. Our longer term vision is built around key cornerstones and guiding principles of returning to the EFL. You're not wrong there, that was quite obvious. Developing a full player and club pathway model, enhancing financial sustainability, including through commercial growth, enhancing engagement with supporters and community stakeholders, investment in facilities and people, and respecting and protecting club heritage. I mean, they all have varying degrees of importance. I think they're all good points, first of all, to put out. There's nothing there that you would say, well, why would you say that? I think the obvious one is return to the Football League. We don't really need to go through that because we all want that.
Yeah.
Developing a full player and club pathway model is an interesting one, because that implies to me that academy is important to him. And we've spoken about the importance of the academy on the podcast before, where it's good to see players coming through, because it means that you're not spending expenses on transfer fees, on loan fees. If you're bringing through players that are good enough, they will make the impact. And then obviously you'll be able to potentially sell them on later down the line, and it will be financially sustainable for the club. That leads, of course, into the financial sustainability point as well. Enhancing engagement with supporters is going to be a big one, because I think we all can see over the last couple of years, it hasn't been anywhere near as good as it should be. I think it's fair to say, home or away, it just doesn't seem to be as, I wouldn't say important, but it just seems to have been sort of set aside in favour of other things. So it remains to be seen how that comes about, but it is, again, a good point to make. Investment in facilities and people. I think investment in facilities is a big one, because we've all seen, there's various areas of the ground where we've seen people complain that they're not good enough. There's sort of wear and tear that hasn't really been addressed. There's been a few volunteers that have helped out in that case. But all in all, investment, again, can only be a good thing. And then respecting and protecting the club heritage, that's boilerplate. You would expect any owner to do that with the club anyway, but it's nice to say at the end of it all. I think, Isaac, out of those, disregarding the EFL one because obviously that's the most important. But other than the EFL one, which one do you think is the most important that they should look at, sort of as a top priority? And don't say EFL
Uh,
because it's obvious.
Probably the fan engagement, because I think it's not been the best over the last few years. I think the club have tried to get. I think we obviously have the supporters panel works to an extent, but um, I think I don't think like the supporters have had a good time in terms of engagement, in terms of being listened to. So once you get the supporters on side and everyone's united, it can only help your, can't it?
Absolutely, Danny.
Well, I'm not going to use the same one as Isaac because I am basically just be repeating the same words. But what I will say is that heritage one, you said it was quite obvious, but I think it's also just so important because I feel like there's been a lot of things that the club have done over the last sort of 8 years that have been met with a lot of real negativity in terms of when the badge first came in. That
I knew
was
you
the
were going
big
to say the
one
badge.
for me. Like, if there was a world where we could return to the ship's wheel, I think that would be the first thing that would get everybody on side. I don't think there'd be one person in the entire fan base, if we went back to the ship's wheel, who would have anything to say about it, because I think it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer, because I think it just screams Hartlepool United. The Towns Club at the bottom of it as well, and also the bringing back the never say die, I think is so big, because I think there's a lot of stuff that's been sort of in the collar, that sort of thing. But for me, a Pool shirt has always had never say die on the bottom of the back of the shirt, and that would be a little thing, but an important thing for me personally.
But there will be a lot of little things that happen in the next sort of 12 months or so. You would say that if they do get them right, even the little things will contribute towards the goodwill that they've already got just by virtue of not being Raj Singh at this moment in time. But yeah, you mentioned the ship's whale. Obviously, I've got, it's a Nike one, so it's probably about 20 years old, this shirt now. It's probably getting on for that. One of the old training shirts with the ship's wheel on. Obviously, it'd be fantastic for the podcast because we are basically ship's wheel. That is the logo. So if they want to change back to that, that'd be fantastic from a brand point of view. But I do get it. Even if it's not the same one, even if it's not exactly the same one, I think a new badge with the wheel on would it would boost things significantly straight away. And the other thing is as well, I think around the retail and such like that with regards to the shirts, we saw it last season where the badges were sewn on rather than stuck on. I think it's things like that where they did listen to the supporters in things like that, and it made them, it improved relations slightly in specific departments. I think if you do things like that where you take, what's the word? If you take supporter feedback on board, if there's a reason why you can't do it, fair enough. Because if as long as you explain why it can't be done, you can't just say no because the supporters will just go, well, why? If you're explaining why it can't be done, fair enough. If you're taking it on board and you're acting on the feedback, that can only be a good thing going forward. And I do think, you made a very good case for the heritage there, to be fair, because there will be a lot where things could have happened and haven't. I think there will be a lot of things that could happen in the next 12 months where it will make or break things with Landon Smith because the fans at the moment have had a lot to deal with in the last however many years it's been. If you take out that promotion season at Ashton Gate, it's been a lot of dismal football,
A lot of nothing,
a lot of
really.
bottom of the table, battling, mid-table rubbish. It just, there's nothing there, as you say. And if things, even little things like that can come back and boost supporters' morale, you'll get bigger crowds every week. You'll get a return to the sort of atmosphere that we had, I think, 3 years ago now, where the entire stand effectively was bouncing up and down every game. It's a very delicate balance. If you can get it right, it can only lead to success in the future. I think the one that neither of you have mentioned, I think that I will mention again because I have already mentioned it, is the pathway. I think if you get that right, that hugely helps the others. It'll improve sustainability because you'll be able to sell these players on in a couple of years when they're doing well for the club, and you'll get the money in from there, and that'll be pure profit because they're being developed by the club. It'll, engagement with supporters, it will help to a point, because if you've got players that come through the academy and are from the area, it can only help with supporters in that aspect, so they'll be able to relate to the players that they're bringing in. Investment in people, it would help with that. And then club heritage, if we become a club that can use their academy wisely and sustainably, it can only help that side as well. You were about to say something there, Danny, before I went on a rant about the academy.
And that's it. That's what I was going to say. So the big thing that we've seen as well since Nicky's been in charge is the players have led a lot of the fist pumps, and we've spoke briefly about how we expect a real big crowd at Altrincham. Just how beautiful would it be if that was the first game where he led them? Because I think that would be the sort of game where, provided that we come away with a win, which is obviously a big sticking point in this, but if we could come away with a win, I think that would be the game where I think he deserves it. Just that moment in front of a real bumper crowd, everything he's been through on and off the pitch with the club as well. It would just, I think that would be a real full circle, beautiful moment for everyone involved.
It would be a bit of a fairy tale moment if Nicky Featherstone, having beaten Altrincham by 5-0 or something like that, if he comes over to the Neil Cooper stand and starts doing the fist pumps, and it just feels like in that moment everyone is completely united. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't tend to happen that much in football, and certainly not to Pools. But Isaac, I think if there was any sort of setup for that moment, it sort of has to have. It doesn't have to be 5-0. I'm being a bit facetious with that point, but even just a win, a 2-1 win will do. If that happens, and it'll just feel as though, Isaac, the stadium is completely united behind not only the owner but the manager, the players. I mean, personally, I've not wanted a manager to do this well. Like, I've not wanted a manager to do well this much for a very long time, just because of the connection he has with the club, and you can see in interview that he cares.
Yeah, I agree. He'll be incredible because he deserves it. He's been here probably during our lowest point under Raj Singh. He's been here when the club nearly went bust. He's like one of us. He lives and breathes Hartlepool United. So for him to potentially get that sort of atmosphere against Altrincham, and if we do win, because it's not guaranteed, but if we win, then I just hope he gets to lead them celebrations because he does deserve it.
Yeah, just to put something else in there as well, I might be wrong, so do correct me. And I am checking this as I go. That's why I'm dragging this out a bit, and I am right. The first game that Morecambe had after they were taken over was at home to Altrincham.
Yeah,
with a
Let's
98th
hope
minute
we
winner
don't
or
have
something
the
like
same
that.
form they had.
Well, yeah, that is true. But I mean, it's nice to have these sort of little, football coincidences, isn't it? I don't like coincidences, but sometimes, they can work out in your favour if they go quite well. Just depends. I mean, Altrincham away, I would argue Altrincham away is up to yesterday, and we will talk about yesterday very shortly. Up to yesterday, I think Altrincham away was probably our most complete performance of the season.
yeah.
It was so good because we scored the 2 goals in the first half. In the second half, we just looked completely at ease. They put us under a lot of pressure, but we just looked the business. And it felt like there was more coming, but unfortunately, obviously, it didn't happen from that. Well, I say from that point, I would suggest, what was the game after Boreham Wood?
Walking, beat them 3-0 at the fifth.
Yeah, we beat Woking 3-0. Then we drew
That's
away
what I
at
think.
Southend because that's the one where Danny got his sunburn at Southend because of their glass boxes. And then we drew 0-0 at Boreham Wood. Sorry, at home to Boreham Wood. What was the game after Boreham Wood? I can't remember what the game was.
Boston, we drew to Boston.
Yes, it was Boston we drew, and then we lost to Forest Green, didn't we? And that's where it went a
Yeah.
bit downhill. Yeah, that's right. It's always September with polls. Hopefully that changes next season. As soon as we get past bank holiday, we suddenly remember we can't play football, which is really annoying every year. But going back to yesterday, which feels like an age ago, doesn't it, given what we've had today? But for, I would say, 70 minutes until Henderson scored, we just looked so good. We looked so good as a team. It reminded me a lot of the Altrincham game at 2-0 because we scored the 2 goals in the first half and then we just looked completely at ease again. I felt as soon as Ian Henderson came on, he was going to score
Yeah.
because he's
Always
one of those
does.
players. Yeah, he's one of those players, a bit like not so much these days, but if you remember when John Akinde had that sort of run
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah.
2010s, where he always played against us and he always scored every single time against us. He felt like that. It just felt like as soon as he came on the pitch, he was going to score. But other than his goal, we just looked fairly comfortable. There were a couple of minor scrambles towards the end, and George Evans had a little bit of a rick going up for a ball in the 96th minute. But other than that, we just looked completely at ease, Isaac.
Yeah, and I think I was boosted by the return of Rhys McNally.
Oh, I'll come on to that shortly because I have many things to say about Rhys McNally.
Yeah,
Continue.
I think I think I think the manager mentioned it. I think we got everything right. The tactics, the press was right, and I think the game being at Accrington probably boosted us as well because it felt like both teams had. I think Rochdale had a disadvantage that they weren't at home, and I think we had an advantage that Rochdale weren't comfortable, sort of like a new ground. So I think we were boosted by them two things, but I also want to give credit to like the likes of Campbell as well, who I thought had a good game. Jay Ben as well, who hasn't had the best of times last 6 to 8 weeks, but I thought yesterday was superb. So it was a good team performance from the lads.
Absolutely. And Rhys McNally, what a defender. He
What
is an absolute Rolls Royce of a defender. He just seems to put everyone at ease in that back 3, 4, 5, whatever we're playing. And the other thing he does as well, you mentioned Jay Ben, he seems to give Ben more confidence to go forward. Because
Yeah,
so far this season, soon as McNally got injured, Ben sort of retreated into himself and he tried to focus more on defending because maybe he didn't trust who was back there. And it became a little bit ragged. Obviously, myself and Danny, we commentated on Scunthorpe on Friday, and he got absolutely tortured by Sellers Fleming down Scunthorpe's left hand side. He was absolutely run ragged, especially in the first half, because the second half Callum Roberts took over, but the first half he was run absolute ragged by the Scunthorpe winger. Yesterday he looked so much more comfortable bombing down that right hand side with McNally behind him. It was just a remarkable turnaround from what we've seen from him the last couple of months. And it feels like if McNally can come back properly fit in the next few weeks, I do get the feeling, obviously he was on the bench, I get the feeling he probably preferred to play, say, 20, 25 minutes, half an hour at the most. I think obviously it was enforced to a point that he had to come on quite early. As we said again on Friday, there isn't much defensively on that bench, and we'll come on to what we need to reinforce shortly with the takeover. But it just felt that right-hand side, Danny, was a lot better with McNally behind Ben, so Ben could move forward. And a lot of the balls that we played weren't necessarily just lumped up to Reed. All he did do his fair share. They were down the lines, and that's how Pools got in behind Rochdale time and time again, particularly in that first half.
I think as well, I think we played basically with 3 centre halves, which allowed Jay Ben to get a lot further, a lot more natural for him, really. Because I think he does, although he's had a lot of criticism for his crosses at times, he would much rather be in the opposition half defending their fullback, much rather than, I'm sure any defender won't want to be one-on-one with the winger. But I think that's where we see him a lot more at his best, even defensively, winning it high, rather than when he gets turned and then it does become a little bit messy. But just on Rhys McNally, I think as much as he gives you defensively, them runs forward as well. And I'm gonna say this, he reminds me a lot of how Lewis Cass attacked in that side, in terms of he also steps up, helps in the attack, and sort of just helps create a little bit of an overload. And then when you chuck Campbell in there as well, you seeing a lot of our attacks were down that side. And it made us a lot more unpredictable going forward, rather than, all right, we're going to try and do something and whip a nothing cross into the box. It actually felt like everything we did was game planned, and they just couldn't do anything to stop it. When we had Campbell pressing, Jay Ben pressing, Reed pressing, even Miley and Sharon and the rest of them were getting in on it. I want to say it's probably our best half of football in quite a few years, that first half, because that first half was just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, funnily enough, you mentioned it about the pressing, and we did press at times, but I do think there were a lot of times in that first half where we didn't press, and it felt like a tactic because we just sort of sat off the keeper as he had the ball at his feet, and we just waited. We just waited for him to make a move. We waited for them to sort of, do something with it. Because I felt like the more we pressed the keeper, he would play the ball beyond us, and that would give them the space to go forward. Because we left him alone with the ball at his feet, they didn't seem to know what to do. And it was very interesting. I'd been interested to talk to Nicky Featherstone afterwards to see if that was a genuine tactic, because it certainly looked like it was. Because it's not like in the past where we've just not bothered to press, because we have done that more than enough times. It felt like a genuine tactic to just leave the keeper with the ball and wait for him to either lump it up long for McNally and Coogan to win the header, because they did pretty much every time, or for it to go out of play. Or sometimes he just seemed to drill it along the floor for some reason and went straight to one of our midfielders. It was a brilliant tactic to use, and it was a ballsy one to use against the top of the league.
Yeah, I think that also was helped by the fact of that keeper. I don't think he's the starting goalkeeper. I'm not sure where. I think it's Watmuff, their starting goalkeeper. I don't know where he was, but he never really looked comfortable. I think the early press that we did sort of just completely threw him off. So that allowed us to be able to just really let him make a mistake. And that's what they did in the first half, really. It felt like every time they got the ball, it was just panic stations. Get the ball out of their feet as quickly as they can without really factoring in where that ball was going, which I think we've seen from Pools quite a lot in the past, where it's just a case of nobody on their team really wanted the ball. It felt in that area. So it just allowed it to be much easier than it really should have been. Against a side like Rochdale, that first half should never have been as easy as it was. But again, going back, that's just absolutely brilliant work from the coaching staff. And every single player to a man, I couldn't have picked a man out of the match. I couldn't have picked a man of the match because everybody did exactly what they were asked to do.
I think man of the match wise, it is a very difficult choice. I think arguably it might be Ben. Arguably it could be Charman. Arguably it could be McNally, even though he was on the pitch for 15 minutes. I think he was just fantastic. He was brilliant. I think it could be, like you say, there were many, many candidates for that. I think it's very refreshing. It's always refreshing. That's the word. When you have multiple candidates for a man of the match, that's what you want. You want it to be difficult because it means the entire team has performed and performed well. I think with regards to your comment about the keeper Broom, he's been in since I think the start of November. Oh no, mid-November. I'm having a look and I think his first... You were right about Watmuff being the usual keeper. I think his last game at the moment was the 22nd of November. I think Broom was brought in afterwards because of an injury.
Right.
I think he's on loan from Bolton. And funnily enough, reading some Rochdale comments from fans, etc., on their social media, he's been a pretty good keeper so far. But I think that they've all said sort of to a man that was his worst by some distance. His distribution was awful. And I think they pointed the same out where we didn't press, so he didn't really know what to do, which again speaks to the tactical sort of bit behind
like
it.
He had too much time,
yeah,
really, rather
which
than
which
he didn't know whether he was going to have not enough time or too much time.
which especially for keepers is such a bad thing because they'll get into their own heads and they won't know where to go. Isaac, do you think that Manny Desirue is regretting his move yet?
Well, apparently he's injured for a long period of the season,
Well, he's
from
certainly
what
injured
I've been
yesterday.
told. Yeah, apparently he's injured to like March, April time, from what their fans were
Well,
saying.
well, no offense to him, but let's hope it's April time because we play them on Easter Monday, I believe,
Yeah, we do.
at home. So let's not have that, please. We don't want him coming back and scoring a hat-trick at the Vic. That'll be, to be fair, that'll probably be the game where we're eighth and we're about to, we're about to get in the playoffs again. And it's just, hopefully Even if he does, I wouldn't mind, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, he's had a good start there, so I think I think for the rest of the league, it's probably a benefit that he hasn't featured because first, I think if he starts yesterday, I think it's a totally different game because their keeper, when we're not pressing, for example, could have gone long. And I think the way you go long, Manny's comfortable in that area, so I think him not featuring is bolstered us as well.
And moving on to what we think the team on the pitch may need going into just under the second half of the season. We played 25. We've got 21 games remaining. We're still, you could argue, in with a shout of seventh position. I think the top six will all agree is a little bit too far out of reach, I think, for anyone other than the six who are already there. But seventh position is very much up for grabs. If we can sneak into there, who knows? But in order to get there, I think it's clear that the squad probably needs reinforcements in different areas. There was an interesting name that popped up earlier on before, X went into meltdown, courtesy of Peter O'Rourke, who has stated that Emerson Sutton is a potential target for Pools. He's been at Morecambe for the first half of the season. He did play 80 minutes against us at the Vic in November on that Tuesday night when we drew 1-1. And by the looks of it from Morecambe fans, he's a decent talent. He chases down lost causes. He's a decent enough creator. And they did say if he was in a better team with a more clinical forward to finish off his chances, he'd be a lot more effective. So he is another winger. We've got three out-and-out wingers, I think, at the minute.
Jarman, Francis,
Nathaniel George.
Nathaniel George, Farrell Brown.
Yeah.
Brown,
So we did.
yeah.
Brown, yeah, I forgot about Brown. So there's 4 there. So if he signs as well, that's 5. I think I would argue that we need a striker. We desperately need a striker. We need someone to take the load off Alex Reid. Johnson hasn't done it for nigh on 30 games now. He's just not working. I would say, to be fair to Danny Johnson, the only thing I would say in defence of Danny Johnson, I think he's not a one-up front striker.
No.
He keeps being brought on at the end of games, like for 10 minutes. He can't hold the ball up because he's diminutive. He's not big enough to do that. He's not strong enough to do that. And I think in the first sort of 6 or 7 games, even though he didn't score, he looked a lot better as part of that front two with Alex Reid. I think a lot of that came down to Reece McNally's injury because we moved to a back 4 after that. And then we played with 1 up front. So the first question I'll ask with regards to Sutton, do you see the need for him coming in? Do you think he is a good addition? Danny, start with you.
Yeah, I don't see why not. More the merrier. I mean, we see a lot of clubs in this league, especially at the top. A lot of them sign a lot of players to the point where you feel like they could field probably 2 11s. And you look at us and sometimes it feels like, especially in the past few years, we've had square pegs and round holes. And well, we've seen Francis picked up a red card, Charman was out, and we basically had nobody. So I think even something like that, signing for the second half of the season, takes the load off of them as well. And because it does feel like if one of 2 or 3 players don't score, we won't score.
Yeah. That's a fair comment, Isaac.
Yeah, I agree with Danny. I think having that depth there can only help us. From going from a Morecambe point of view, I think I praised the lad a lot. Like I said, I think I read somewhere someone said for a 19-year-old, he has a very good work ethic and very good attitude, which I think our fans can appreciate. We could get beat 4-5-0, but if them players try when they're actually showing effort, I don't think I think it goes a long way with the fans. So, like Danny said, having the depth there because when Francis and Simon were gone, we did struggle. So having another winner can only help us.
Absolutely. I think, to be fair, we've both spoken about, I say we all spoke about a certain frontman from South Shields who might be very well suited to the club if our new owner potentially wants to go and splash some cash. I think, Danny, you'd probably agree.
Yeah, my concern would be just how much South Shields would want for, I'll just say Paul Blackett, because I feel like in the position they're in, they can pretty much charge whatever they want. We see Matt Douglas say that if any club wants Josh Stones, they have to pay £20 million. I can see them basically doing a similar thing and just slapping an unrealistic, ridiculous price tag on him and saying, look, we can't lose him. So if you're going to give us money for him, it needs to be probably to the point where it's not worth it. And you can probably go out and look elsewhere. But I mean, if you're going to splash the cash, he's the sort of player you splash it on.
It feels very FIFA and Football Managers, doesn't it? When you go in for a player and then the quote is such like an outrageous price that it's basically the game's way of saying that the club are not going to sell him at all. And to be fair to South Shields, it's not as if they need the money either. So, it would be very difficult, particularly in January and particularly with the position they're in the National League North, to get their top scorer from them. But ambition, if you're an ambitious club and you want to do the deal, it's a test, isn't it? I wouldn't say if he doesn't do it, then obviously the ambition isn't there because it's January at the end of the day. And obviously we've got plenty of time to get him if we'd like to get him. And there may well be a case to say, well, we'll just ask in August or June, whatever it is. We'll go for the summer and we'll try and recruit them then. It may well be that they have different targets in mind. But it'll be very interesting to see what they do in the striking department because, Isaac, I'm fairly sure you'll agree, we do desperately need one because Johnson doesn't look as though he's working at the moment. Oliver has been injured for around about 2 years now because I can't remember the last time he played. We don't seem to have much in the way other than Alex Reid, and he can't do it all himself.
Yeah, I think what we need is a target man because I don't think Reid's that sort of player. I don't think he's the sort of player to be having balls kicked in the air from him. I think he's someone who can play on the line of the last defence and just run at teams. I think when he was at Wellstone, that's the sort of strike partnership he had. He had a big lad next to him. He could just flick all the balls for him. He could do all the grafting, and he can just run at defenders. So you mentioned Blackett. He would be a fantastic signing. But one, if we have to go realistic, probably another target man because I don't think we'll see Oliver again. I don't think Johnson's that type of player. So having another target man would be my go-to striker.
Absolutely. I think very fair. I think, as we've said, Reid can't do it all on his own. He needs assistance. He needs help. And to be fair to Johnson, I think he's had his troubles and I just don't think he's particularly suited to the team that he's in. I think playing him up top, it just doesn't work. He needs to be part of a front two. I think Mickey Barron has said that recently as well because he coached him in the academy. I think he did an interview with Robbie Stelling, if I remember rightly, where he said he will work in a front two. He doesn't work on his own because it's very difficult to say lightweight. I would say he's quite diminutive. He's not able to put himself about. So he needs that partner alongside him. So it'd be interesting to see if Reece McNally hopefully stays fit now to the end of the season and we go back to that back five, as to whether he partners Johnson and Reid up front again with another rotating striker to come in. On a different note, the defence, obviously McNally is now hopefully back for good. Superb. So we've got those back three in McNally, Coogan, and either Parks or John, depending on what formation you play. You've got Ben on the right. He's recalled Stevenson and Darcy as well, which again goes back to our academy points, but he's recalled them for the time being. So we need more defensive reinforcements. That is just a fact, because if you look at the bench for the last few games, we spoke about it on commentary on Friday, there's nothing there. There's no defensive reinforcement on the bench. The only even remotely defensive player, other than the goalkeeper, which again tells you something, is Nathan Ferguson. He's a midfielder. So we just don't have the defensive reinforcements to be able to play a back five. And as it stands, I think a back five is the best way to get the most out of the players, especially Ben. down that right-hand side because he needs McNally behind him. It doesn't work with anyone else. So I think realistically we need to be looking at centre-back reinforcements pretty much straight away. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind.
Yeah, I think also left back is a really big one because then you can allow Cam John to move in a little bit,
Into
play
defence,
that left centre half, and then also that would then give you whoever we would bring in that position, and Bez Topolage on the left hand side, and Cam John can shift over if needs be. So that would cover two positions. If you can find another left back who can be comfortable playing left sided centre half, that kills two birds with one stone. And I think for us, that's probably the best case scenario, I think, because I don't think we've ever really been a club to stockpile loads and loads and loads of players. So I remember when Simon Grayson was in charge, the first thing he said was versatility. And I think you've got a lot of that in the team. You've got a lot of players who can play in multiple positions. So I think an extra left back who can also play left-sided centre half would just really cover that. And then you've got Parks, Coogan, McNally, Hunter can drop into there. We've seen Sharon drop into there as an emergency. So I think then you're probably sorted.
Yeah, as long as you're not relying on emergency like centre backs in from midfield all of the time, I think the depth in there needs to be something that makes that avoidable. Because at the moment, one injury to one of those players and we're done.
Yeah.
We've seen it with McNally. That's why it's a big reason why the form has dropped quite a bit. In that we were so rock solid at the start of the season, and then as soon as McNally got injured, it then became a problem. The other thing, of course, being Harvey Cartwright being the best keeper in the division, and an injury to him, of course, will ruin anyone's season. Give credit to George Evans, though. He's been a very good pickup since Cartwright. He's not at the level of Cartwright, but it'd be very difficult to be at the level of Cartwright. But he's still of a very good level, and I think he's done pretty well since he came in under the trying circumstances. It'd be very interesting to see him with that back five in front of him at the start of the season, George Evans. Because if we can get... I mean, I'd love to know where Topolage has gone. I'm assuming he's just out of favour because he's not injured.
The last thing I heard, he was ill.
Hmm.
But like that was 3 or 4 weeks ago.
I just don't know if maybe he's just out of favour at this point, but it's a bit strange because he's there, even if you just put him on the bench. Because as we've said, the bench has zero defensive like reinforcements on it. So even if he's there, just put him on the bench because it's better than not having any defensive subs at all. It's slightly odd. I would like to see him back in that back five where he's got John behind him to do similar to what McNally's doing for Ben on the other side, to be able to reinforce that and allow the wing backs to bomb on and provide the width. It could come at the detriment to the wingers because playing wing backs and wingers can be something of an overload and it leaves you a little bit short in the centre. But it's good to have all these options. And as you said, the versatility in there of these players allows them to play multiple positions. And I don't think that's as much of an issue going further up the pitch, because if you're versatile in defence, it means you're changing the defence a lot, and you don't want to do that. No club wants to do that. Because if you're changing the defence every week, it won't work because no one will get settled. Rotating around positions further up the pitch in the wingers and the striker and the attacking midfielders, fluidity is not a bad thing going forward. So it's a catch-22 because you need to find the best way of being able to incorporate all of these qualities. I think we just need that back five back. It suits the players we've got down to the ground, so we need that defensive stability. And if we can get a clinical striker in the vein of a Blackett, even if it's not Blackett, that then helps us enormously up the pitch. I think it hinges on that. I think the ones we need desperately, we need the striker. We need, as you've said, a left back or a left wing back who can potentially play that left centre back role as well, similar to Cameron John, if we can get one. And arguably, we probably need either another centre back or a right wing back as well, because Stevenson and Darcy, they have been recalled, but he hasn't yet played them. They're not even on the bench. I think Darcy had a couple, didn't he, when we were going through that little Anthony Nomads episode that we shall never speak of again. But he's very rarely played, so it's clear that he doesn't really think they're quite ready. So we could do with reinforcements in that area. The other thing to suggest as well around Cameron John, because there was a little bit of panic yesterday in certainly my head, but also everyone else's head, was the York recalled Jeff King from Bournemouth, which, you would, wouldn't you? Bournemouth are currently, I think they're currently top, aren't they, given that we beat Rochdale?
Mm.
So why would you leave a player on loan to a team that are currently top of the league? It beggars belief. But there was also the suggestion that a decision on Cameron John was undecided. I can't remember what the exact word was. This was from
Yet to be
BBC
made,
Radio
I
York.
think they said.
Yeah, yet to be made. But then Robbie Stelling has come out and said that the recall clause is mutual between the two clubs. So, Isaac, that can only be good news, because if Hartlepool United decide to send Cameron John back, we might as well cancel the takeover, because all of that goodwill would be frittered up the wall.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I think it's a detriment to York that he's not available for them because honestly, I think he's one of the best centre backs in the league. Um, One thing I would mention about the transfer targets is George Evans is gone because I think that runs out in a week or two. So that would be top of my priority, trying to extend that to the end of the season. Then on to the top of our point. Would Bromley want a player at us who's not playing? Because he hasn't featured. I don't think he's played under Featherstone. I think he's come on one or two times, but I don't think he's featured under Featherstone. And I'm sure we said that we've extended it to the end of the season, but surely Bromley are gonna do something about it because I don't think he's played under. Like I said, I don't think he's played under Featherstone. So I think that's something to look out on as well.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, there are a couple of York fans who have commented on that, mainly focusing on Jeff King, but also with Cameron John, they've noticed that we're obviously quite fond of him. But they've suggested that we might as well keep him for the season, given the favour that we did them last night, which is,
Yeah.
it's a nice thing to say from York fans, isn't it? Because we did do them a massive favour. It was a good game last night in terms of York as well, by the way, because I don't know if you saw, but Altrincham went down to 10 men and then equalised late on, and then York went straight up the other end and scored the winner again. This is a bit of a seesaw game. And again, Altrincham have popped up. They seem to be involved quite a lot. Even though they're not anywhere near the top of the table, they're involved quite a bit with the top 10 teams, aren't they, these days? But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think George Evans is a very good point as well, by the way, because he's shown the form that we needed from a keeper after Cartwright. Again, he was never going to replace Cartwright outright because Cartwright's just too good. However, he's proven a very steady presence, and we could do with just extending the loan. There's no reason for Millwall to call him back, personally.
Can't see them ever using him this season.
No. It's funny that, because when we signed him originally as well, George Evans, there was some sort of murmurings that, because he'd had that championship experience, that people wondering how have we got him? Because it wasn't just like sort of one or two, like to cover for an injury or something like that. Like, he'd had at least a dozen or something like that, like 15. Like, it wasn't sort of a 19-year-old with stepping in for an injury. So if he carries on in the way that he is and Millwall aren't going to play him, there's no reason why he can't stay for the season, you would think, Danny.
No, I think it would take a massive goalkeeping crisis really at Millwall for them to ever need him back. And I think that's sort of what they had last season in terms of it was a massive goalkeeping crisis and he stepped in and played a couple of games. But it wouldn't surprise me, and I don't know their squad inside and out. I don't know their keeper situation. But it wouldn't surprise me if they learned from that and just signed a couple of extra as cover this summer, just to make sure that they're not having to be put in that situation again. So for me, signing him on until the end of the season, absolute no-brainer. Seems like he's enjoying himself, and well, you'll struggle to find better in January, and also you'll find a lot worse in this league than George Evans.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, they could go the Chelsea route, personally. Just sign like 7 or 8 goalkeepers and have them all in the first team squad. Just loan them all out, and if they need one, just recall them back. But yeah, like I say, it'd be worth him staying, and I think fans recognise his output as well. See, he's not kept as many clean sheets anywhere near as Cartwright, but there's been a lot going on in front of him, and I think that the fans do recognise that, and he has been very good for us since he signed as well. So fingers crossed he stays with us. But looking ahead to this weekend, we've mentioned Woking briefly. Before we come to the massive home game against Altrincham, we do have one last, well, the first game of 2026. It's not a New Year's game, which feels a little bit odd. I think it's fair to say it's a little bit of a strange one, but a Saturday trip to Woking is probably better than a Thursday trip to Woking and probably 7:45.
Yeah.
But it's a good opportunity, as we've said, to mark this new era with a victory, even if it is about 5.5 hours away from the Vic. And fingers crossed they do pull out a result. Do you think that they can carry that confidence and that momentum from not only takeover, but from that performance on Tuesday, Danny, to a victory against Woking, who, lest we forget, were in decent form going into Christmas, but they did lose at home to Braintree yesterday night, so they're not entirely, infallible.
Well, I think Nicky said it last night that they've set a level now, and it feels like anything below what we saw yesterday will feel like us not at our best. And I feel like that first half once again was the best we've seen this group of players play, and knowing that they can do that is what will inevitably at some point this season create a little bit of frustration, because you can't play like that every week. No team can. But I think that belief that they'll have probably found in themselves, thinking, we are really, really good at what we do. They should be able to then take that, and especially your Luke Charmans, who scored, Max Coogan scoring a header as well. They're the sort of things that if we're going to really have a push, we need goals from Charman, Francis. Campbell needs to keep up the rate he's at. I would like to see Reid get himself back on the score sheet like he did against Woking at our place. And also, I'd like to see our centre-halves keep chipping in with goals from corners, because we had quite a few last night. And, well, if we can keep creating from them and we can start chipping in with a few corners, then that's where our goals can come from, because a good side has goals from all over the place.
Absolutely. And Isaac, I mentioned the form there from Woking. They've lost 2 of the last 3, one of them being against Scunthorpe on the 20th of December. They drew away at Eastleigh, which isn't the worst result in the world. But before that, they'd been on a very good run. They'd beaten Carlisle away, which is obviously no easy feat. We've seen that ourselves. But before that, they had been unbeaten. If you disregard let's say, the anomaly of result against Brackley in the FA Cup 4th qualifying round, because here at Hartlepool United, we don't recognise FA Cup 4th qualifying rounds these days. They don't exist. We don't want that result on our scorecard. But before that, they hadn't lost in the league since September the 27th, which was an away defeat at Borehamwood. And we all know how well Borehamwood have been playing this season. They haven't lost at home in the league since Forest Green on the 20th of September. That was before the 20th of December against Scunthorpe. And since then, they've lost 2 in a row. So, having heard all that, obviously they're on a little bit of a downward spiral and Pools are on the up, certainly from a morale perspective. And given that they beat Rochdale, albeit at Accrington rather than Rochdale, there are plenty of optimism. There's plenty of optimism to go out there, isn't there?
I think Woking are a good side. They've shown that in spells this year and this season. But like Danny said, we've seen what Pools are capable of when you get the likes of McNally, Charman, Francis back. So I think now we've shown what we are capable of. I think it's now important that we do continue our form. Like I said, it is a tough place to go walking. Like you said, they've won a few in the bounce at home, apart from the last 2 results. So I think it'll be a tough game for Pools, but I think on our day, like we did see yesterday, we can beat anyone in this league. So hopefully tomorrow, hopefully against Woking, we have a similar result from yesterday.
Absolutely. And it's worth saying as well, Woking are currently 11th in the National League, 5 points behind Pools. So they can't take over on Saturday, regardless of the result. Solihull are directly below Pools. They have 34 points. Pools have 37. So they can, but there needs to be a 5-goal turnaround in the goal difference as well. Because funnily enough, Pulls have a goal difference of +8, which is a nice little bonus considering usually we're hovering around -3 at this point or something of that nature. So it's nice to have a positive goal difference for once. And then we'll have to see where that takes us from that point onwards. If we can win on Saturday, takes us on to 40. We can't go into 7th as it stands. Obviously, 4 points the gap to Southend. It is also worth saying we do keep mentioning the fact that 7th may well be gettable, and it might be gettable. Southend do have 2 games in hand. We've always said about points on the board being important, and obviously it is, and it's the be-all and end-all. However, you know, win those 2 games in hand. One of them's away at Rochdale, so that could, you know, depends on how Rochdale play, to be fair. If they play like they did yesterday, Southend might turn them over. But on the other hand, the other game, I think, is at home to Gateshead, which you would expect them to win. So, you know, we've just got to keep...
a 7-point gap. You
Pretty
can expect
much, yeah.
them to get some points out of them too. So,
well, absolutely. I think, you know, the next game is at home to Truro, which realistically they should win. There's no real jeopardy there. I don't think it'd be very difficult for them not to win that game. And then after that, they've got a pretty tricky run, actually. If you ignore the Gateshead game in hand, they've got York away, which is obviously a horrible game. They've got a Tuesday night game at home to Eastleigh. You would expect them to win, but again, Eastleigh are one of those teams. It's a little bit sort of banana skin. And then away at Boston and at home to Rochdale, live on DAZN at 5:30. So, you know, there's some tricky games there. Then again, next game after that is away at Scunthorpe as well. So they've got quite a few of the top 6 in the next few games. So Pulls have got to take advantage, you would think, to have any chance. Because if the gap is still 4 or 5 points after those games where they've played a lot of the top teams, it then becomes more and more difficult. And at the end of the day, Pulls will, again, run out of games, as they've done in previous seasons.
yeah, and I think that's the really key thing for us, because it feels like every season has been very, very similar, where we have a good run, really positive, there or thereabouts, drop off. And I think that's what this league is, though. It is really, really streaky. And I feel like a lot of teams are like that. The best teams aren't, or should I say, the top teams who go up aren't always the best teams. They're just the most consistent. And I think going into the new year, that's what we need to be, is consistent. That doesn't mean win every week, but it just means win the games that you have to win. And win the games that you should be winning. So you look at the table, your Morecambes, your Truros, Boston, that game against Altrincham, that is going to be a massive, massive game. And then you can then, if you win those games, class your Rochdales, your Forest Greens as a little bit of a free hit, where anything's a bonus. But the issue is, which we've done also many a time, when you drop points, as we have done to Boston and Tamworth this season, it makes, as it did that York game, obviously we never won that game, but it felt like that game then become a little bit of a must-win. And if you can avoid them games having to be a must-win, easier said than done, that's how you end up closing what could be a 7 or even more point gap. But that all comes through winning the games that we need to win. The games we should win are going to be so, so important over the next couple of months.
Absolutely. And again, looking at that run-in for January specifically, walking away, Altrincham at home, Gateshead at home. That's a Tuesday night game. That'll be an interesting game. Brackley away, Aldershot at home. If you're going to carry it on to February, you've got Tamworth away. York away is going to be a very difficult game. That's a Wednesday night. Sutton at home. Solihull away. Carlisle at home, again, is a Wednesday night. That's going to be a difficult game as well. And Wealdstone away. That takes you up to the end of February. So in that time, we only play teams above us twice. That's York and Carlisle. Every other team in that run is below us in the league. And that, again, covers 11 games. So there are 9 games in that run where we play teams below us in the league. It's that sort of run. And we had this last year as well, which is why I hesitate to start demanding good runs and results, because it didn't work out last year. But it was the same time of year, January, February, where we had the chance against teams we should be beating, or at least taking points off, and we didn't. We drew too many of them. We lost a couple. I think the one against Altrincham stands out as well, by the way, because that was the day before my birthday. And we lost, and it just derailed us completely. So, Isaac, you would think if we're going to have any chance of getting into the playoffs this season, we must take a very positive return from those games.
Yeah, like Danny said, I think you need to win your home games, and when you're going away from home, you need to try pick up a point if you can. But like we saw last night, anyone can beat anyone in this league. It's that sort of league where you know it could be first versus 24th, and 24th could win. That's how close this league is. So when we are playing teams below us, it's important that we do capitalise on it, because like you say, it's only Carlisle and York that will have above us that we've got to play in the next 2 months, and there's only one of them that's away. So it's if you look at the sides around us, I think we're lucky that we do have a good run of games that are winnable. So if we're able to capitalise on that, then anything's possible.
Because once again, if you look at our end to the season, it's absolutely horrific. So we need to take advantage of these games, certainly while we have them. With the exception of Boston, which is our last game of the season away, if you look at our April, it's Scunthorpe away, Rochdale at home, Bournemouth away, and Forest Green at home. That is a horrible, horrible run of games at any point in the season. But to have that, the last sort of, if you disregard Boston, the last 4 games, the one before that as well is Southend at home. So all of those games, that 5-game run is horrific. So fingers crossed we can get some momentum before that happens. If we can win the majority of our games in the next 3 months, we'll be fine. Easier said than done, but given the wave of momentum that we've got now, is it all positive? We feeling positive going into the second half of the season?
You have to. You absolutely have to be. I mean, this is news that we've all been waiting for a long, long time when you think about it. So it would be really, really silly to just disregard it. And even if we get beat on Saturday, it would be really, really silly, in my opinion, to then disregard it and say, oh, well, that's same old. Because for me, this season, as we've seen in that statement, you mentioned it earlier on, it does sort of feel like, even to the new ownership, this season's a bit of a see what we can do, free hit, and then go in the summer and go for it in the summer. So if we can hit a nice little run, basically say to the lads, look, you're playing for your shirt next season.
Absolutely, and Isaac, that's always a good motivator. The players are playing for their shirt next season. There's a new ownership. There'll be investment put into the club that he's promised. And Nicky Featherstone will have all the time in the world. Hopefully, that's another thing, by the way. Hopefully the managerial merry-go-round is stopped now.
Yeah.
Given the new ownership, hopefully Nicky Featherstone is here for something approaching the long term and we can build from this point. But going back to the original, everyone's playing for their shirt next season. We've got the investment coming in. Hopefully they are now motivated to do their best for the club for the rest of the season, and it leads on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, like I was mentioning before, this alternate game, these players will see what Hartlepool United is about. You'll see a lot of the Northwest corner back in action. You'll see fans returning who haven't been all season. I think you'll get a buzz around the place, and you'll get to see what Hartlepool United is about when everyone is united. And I think it will motivate them players. So to have this announcement come when it has, it's perfect timing really, because we got 20, I think it's 22 games now. The only way is up. We've got rid of all the negativity around the club. Whatever happens at the end of the season, I think there will still be positivity there. As long as we don't get relegated, and that isn't happening. I think you can say to the players, look, the fans are going to be behind you every week, because, like I said, whatever happens, I think because Rise is gone, I still think fans will still be paying their money, paying to see the lights. I think whatever happens, because I don't think no press is the right word, but I think they can be forgiven. I don't think I think attendances won't drop if we go on a bad run, I think you'll get a strong 4,000-5,000 still going, and them players will be motivated because, like I said, you'll see the true potential of this football club.
Absolutely. And finally, before we go, one word for a couple of different things. So, firstly, one word to describe Raj Singh's tenure overall. So, Danny, I'll start with you.
Stable.
Stable. Interesting. Isaac?
Mixed.
Mixed. Fair enough. Okay. The next one. One word to describe the last 24 hours. So that encompasses Rochdale and the news today. Isaac, you first this time.
Alcohol.
Which one?
Alcohol.
Alcohol. Well, it is New Year's Eve today, so, get the fireworks out later on. Danny?
Off it.
Off it? It's very northeast turn this discussion has taken. And finally, just one word to describe what you see the future looking like. So you can take that as this season, you can take it as just the general future of the club. Danny, you first.
Back.
Back. That's more like it. Isaac?
America.
America, yeah, we'll take that one. Yeah, we'll all be eating hot dogs celebrating Independence Day come this time in July if we're up, which would be fantastic news for us all. But gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a very roller coaster 24. I'd say roller coaster for 24 hours, but it has been a very roller coaster 24 hours. It's a new era for Hartlepool United. We all woke up today thinking that we were just going to record a nice little comeback episode, a nice little victory at the league leaders, but it's taken something of a turn, and the news being that Landon Smith is now the new owner of Hartlepool United, replacing outgoing Raj Singh. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been nice to
Still
have you.
doesn't
Pleasure
feel
for...
real, that, by the way. Still doesn't feel real.
It doesn't feel real, does it? No, not at all. I think, is it Tailwind Group? I think, if I remember rightly. So, all hail Tailwind Group, and hopefully there are better things to come. And as Danny said, hopefully we are back from this point onwards. And there's a lot of optimism for the rest of the season and beyond. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Cheers. Thank you.
Pleasure.